I am here to talk about home remedies and herbs that can help with better health. And I would be glad for questions as we go along rather than waiting till the last so we don't miss anything. And I'm from Missouri, as John said, and I'll show you a couple of things of where I garden. This is part of my garden. This is what happens when you become obsessed with something. I travel and collect seeds and collect plants. I like to go unusual places. Several years ago, I found I had polycystic kidney disease, which is a genetic disease. The only cure for it is a kidney transplant. And I panicked and thought, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to travel, but I thought I'd do that when I retired. Now I may not be able to do that. So the first place I chose to go to was West Papua New Guinea, the most remote place. They get something like 300 tourists a year. I'm from near Branson. Branson, if you don't know it, congratulations. If you do know it, you know they get 9 million tourists a year. So 9 million to 200. And it was a perfect place for me to go because I fell in love with the primitive area and I brought back seeds. This is where I garden. I grow herbs and vegetables. And I use them. I started gardening when I was quite small. That is to remind me that you may know me from Mother Earth News. I've been advertising for them for a number of years. I have written for their various publications for the past 20 years, and people sometimes know me as Mr. Nail Fungus because that's my formula, and that's one of the things I do in my collecting remedies. I believe in eating real food, and real food has a lot to do with your health. So I eat from my garden. On an average year, I grow somewhere between 200 and 300 varieties of herbs and a wide variety of vegetables, way more than I can eat and give away. And I found something. I live in a rural area. Not rural like out here in the country a few miles, but rural. My nearest grocery store is 20 miles away. Nearest post office is 12 miles away. So I have to plan ahead when I'm going to garden and when I'm going to eat. So I have freezers and I stock up as I go along. I prefer to eat my food from what I would buy at the store. And part of that comes from my parents. My parents ran a rural grocery store. And rural meaning there were 50 people in our town. And we were the only grocery store around, so we had to stock a little bit of everything for everybody because this was a farming community. You would think that owning a grocery store meant that's how we lived. But you would be wrong because my parents grew up in the Great Depression. They got married in the 1930s, in the middle of the Depression. And everything that they ate had to come from their garden. So my parents had a huge garden every year for all the years that I was living at home and that they had the grocery store. So while we sold canned and frozen food to the neighbors, my mother canned and she grew things and my parents both gardened. And so I started gardening when I was 3 years old. My program this afternoon, if you happen to come to it, about food and edible flowers and vegetables, I have a picture of me at age 3 trying to push a cultivator. And one of the best things that my father did for me, besides push me out of the way so he could actually garden, was my parents allowed me to have my own garden at age 5. Now, age 5 sounds like awfully young, and it is. But the gift my parents gave me was first to dig up a little plot of ground, let me order the seeds from the seed catalog, and plan where they were going to be planted, and grow them and not interfere. My mother never once said, sweet peas are not really going to be much to eat, or corn shouldn't be grown right there with the pumpkins and the squash and everything else. So what I did was I ordered everything I wanted, and I had a spot about 10 foot by 10 foot. In my mind, it may have been 8 foot or 4 foot, I don't know. But it was mine, it was my garden. I planted a row of corn because I love sweet corn, and 6 inches over I planted a row of peas, and then 6 inches over I planted a row of dahlias, and then zinnias, and on and on and on, because everything I ordered I had to plant. Now, of course, summer comes along, it gets hot like it is out today, and the weeds begin to grow, and I still don't like to weed in the middle of the day. So the weeds grew, and some things didn't grow at all, and everything was too close together, and the corn shaded out the tomatoes. But every little single thing that my parents grew, that I grew, my mother would make a really big deal about it on the dinner table. This is what James Edward grew. And so from that, I learned you have to learn spacing, and you have to keep the weeds out because they pull all the nutrients. So, back to where we were. If this is what your diet is, this is what you get. And there are all kinds of remedies for acid reflux. Suddenly, everybody has acid reflux. Look at the diet. If you just ate those deep-fried donuts, dipped in chocolate and batter and fried again, you're going to have acid reflux. It's like the lady in the program just before mine talking about the intestinal flora that make your life better. This is a simple recipe. Apple cider vinegar. Add some ginger to it and drink it. And it's almost instant. There's a company that makes this, and we used to sell it, but because it's liquid, the shipping costs were a little expensive for us, so we quit. But all it is apple cider vinegar with ginger. Both of them are good for acid reflux.